Jason Corbett and Melissa Corbett seemed like the perfect couple. He, a devoted father rebuilding his life after tragedy, and she, a charismatic woman who brought new light into his world. But behind the walls of their idyllic home lay secrets so dark that they would end in bloodshed, betrayal, and a shocking courtroom battle that gripped the nation. Jason Corbett appeared to have it all: a successful career, two beautiful children, and a loving wife. To those who knew him or caught glimpses of his life, he seemed like the embodiment of resilience and hope. Years earlier, tragedy had struck when Jason's first wife passed away unexpectedly, leaving him a widower with two young children. It was a devastating blow, but Jason, determined to honor his late wife's memory, poured his energy into raising his kids and building a stable future for them. His path to rebuilding his life led him to Melissa, a bright and ambitious woman who appeared to share his vision for family and happiness. Melissa brought a vivacious energy into Jason's life, and their relationship quickly blossomed. They were married in a romantic ceremony that was the talk of Ashwood Falls, their small, tight-knit town. Friends and family remarked on how Jason seemed to smile more easily with Melissa by his side, and his children seemed to adore her. Together, they moved into a spacious home with a picturesque garden. It was the kind of house where you'd imagine laughter echoing through the halls and joyful family meals shared around a warm table. Jason and Melissa were seen as the perfect couple, pillars of their community. Melissa threw herself into social events, hosting dinner parties and charity fundraisers, while Jason balanced his demanding career with quality time for his children. The Corbett family often spent weekends hiking in the nearby woods, enjoying family movie nights, or playing in the yard. For those who looked from the outside in, it was the perfect picture of happiness. Yet, even the clearest skies can hide storm clouds on the horizon. Over time, subtle signs began to emerge that something might not be right. While Jason remained the devoted father and hard-working professional everyone knew, his easygoing nature seemed to shift. He became quieter at gatherings, his laughter less frequent. Melissa, once the charming hostess who drew people into her orbit, occasionally displayed a sharper edge. Some neighbors noticed tension between them, glances that lingered too long, conversations that ended abruptly when others approached, and even muffled arguments that carried through the walls of their pristine home. One particularly observant neighbor remembered hearing raised voices late one night. While arguments weren't unusual in any relationship, the level of intensity seemed out of place for the Corbetts. It was the sort of thing people noticed but dismissed. After all, every couple has their disagreements. Others mentioned how Jason's once vibrant presence seemed dulled in Melissa's company, a stark contrast to the man he had been before. Despite the whispers, Jason's public demeanor revealed little. He continued to show up for his kids, attend school events, and engage in friendly conversations with coworkers and neighbors. His children were his world, and that love was unwavering. Melissa, too, maintained her social life, painting a picture of success and unity. But behind the carefully curated exterior, cracks were forming, ones that would eventually splinter and expose the darkness beneath the surface. This idyllic life, as it turned out, was not what it seemed. On a crisp October morning, the tranquility of Ashwood Falls was shattered by a frantic 911 call from Melissa Corbett. Her voice was panicked as she claimed her husband Jason had attacked her in a violent rage, forcing her to defend herself. Emergency responders rushed to the Corbett home, a place once thought to symbolize family and harmony, but now the scene of a tragedy. When authorities arrived, they were met with a chilling sight. Jason Corbett lay motionless on the bedroom floor, his body showing signs of a brutal struggle. Blood pooled beneath him, and a baseball bat lay nearby, its surface stained red. Melissa stood in the corner, her face pale and trembling. She clutched her hands together, which bore minor injuries she attributed to the fight. She repeated her story to the officers. Jason had snapped, and she had no choice but to protect herself. At first glance, the scene seemed to align with Melissa's account, but as investigators surveyed the room, subtle inconsistencies began to emerge. Jason's injuries were severe, far beyond what would be expected in a single moment of panic or self-defense. Multiple blows to his head indicated prolonged violence rather than an isolated act of desperation. The neighborhood buzzed with the news. It was impossible to reconcile the Jason Corbett they knew, a gentle, devoted father, with the image Melissa painted of an out-of-control aggressor. Friends and family expressed disbelief, describing Jason as a man of quiet strength and kindness, someone who avoided conflict whenever possible. Melissa's story didn't sit well with them, but the evidence needed to tell the true story remained buried beneath the chaos. The autopsy report further complicated the narrative. It revealed that Jason had suffered numerous blunt force injuries, suggesting a level of force that investigators found hard to square with Melissa's claims. The medical examiner noted that some of the wounds were consistent with an attack, while Jason was already incapacitated. This detail cast doubt on the idea that Melissa had simply been fighting for her life. As police worked to piece together what had happened, they interviewed neighbors and family members. Several neighbors mentioned hearing shouting from the Corbett house in the days leading up to the incident. One neighbor, who lived just across the street, recalled hearing a loud crash on the night of Jason's death, followed by silence. Melissa's behavior also raised questions. While she appeared shaken in the immediate aftermath, her demeanor shifted in the days that followed. She was cooperative, but seemed overly focused on controlling the narrative. Her insistence that Jason had a violent side struck many as incongruous with the man they knew. Meanwhile, Jason's family was devastated. They rejected Melissa's story outright, calling it a fabrication. Jason had never shown signs of aggression or instability. Instead, they hinted at something darker, an underlying tension in the marriage that Jason had confided to only a select few. The discovery of Jason's lifeless body marked the beginning of a case that would unravel the secrets hidden behind the walls of the Corbett home. As investigators dug deeper, it became clear that the truth was far more complex and far more chilling than anyone could have imagined. As investigators delved into the circumstances surrounding Jason Corbett's death, a different picture of his life began to emerge. While his public image had been one of a devoted father and husband, evidence uncovered behind the scenes painted a far more complex and unsettling reality. The relationship between Jason and Melissa, which had appeared strong and supportive, was riddled with tension, control, and unresolved conflict. Emails and text messages retrieved from Jason's phone revealed cracks in their marriage. Disputes about finances were a recurring theme, with Melissa often expressing frustration over Jason's desire to maintain strict control over their expenses. She wanted more freedom to spend as she pleased, while Jason, as the primary earner, felt obligated to keep a tight grip on their budget. But their conflicts didn't end with money. Another significant point of contention revolved around Jason's children from his first marriage. Jason had always been fiercely protective of his children, determined to provide them with stability after the loss of their mother. While Melissa had stepped into the role of stepmother, it was clear from the messages that her relationship with the children was strained. She frequently complained about feeling undervalued or excluded, and she resented Jason's tendency to prioritize their needs over her own. In turn, Jason expressed growing concerns about Melissa's treatment of the kids, hinting at a controlling streak that made him uneasy. Even more alarming were messages between Jason and his close family members. In these exchanges, Jason confided his frustrations about the marriage and, in some instances, his fears. He mentioned feeling trapped and worried about Melissa's unpredictable moods. He even hinted at the possibility of leaving her, taking the children, and returning to his hometown. These messages painted a stark contrast to Melissa's claims of a happy marriage marred only by Jason's alleged outbursts. Physical evidence further contradicted Melissa's story. Forensic analysis of the crime scene revealed troubling details. Blood spatter patterns on the walls and floor indicated that Jason had been struck multiple times while lying down, suggesting he was already incapacitated when the attack continued. This finding raised serious doubts about Melissa's assertion that she acted in self-defense. Additionally, the baseball bat, which Melissa claimed she grabbed in a moment of desperation, told its own story. Her fingerprints on the weapon revealed a firm, deliberate grip. There were no signs of a struggle to wrest control of it from Jason, nor were there defensive wounds on Melissa that would support her claim of fighting for her life. Melissa's financial records also came under scrutiny. Investigators discovered that she had recently inquired about Jason's life insurance policy, a detail that sent shockwaves through the case. Coupled with the revelation that Jason had been planning to alter his will to exclude Melissa, the timing of his death began to appear less like an unfortunate tragedy and more like a calculated act. As these details came to light, the case took on a chilling new dimension. What had initially seemed like a tragic altercation between husband and wife now bore the hallmarks of a deeper, more sinister motive. Jason's friends and family, who had been steadfast in their belief in his character, now had their suspicions confirmed. The man they loved and respected had not died in a moment of rage, but had likely been the victim of a premeditated act. The trial of Melissa Corbett captivated the nation, drawing attention from every corner as the details of Jason Corbett's death were laid bare in a courtroom. Melissa maintained her innocence, insisting that she had acted in self-defense during a moment of terror. Her legal team painted a picture of Jason as a man battling inner demons, prone to outbursts of anger, stemming from the unresolved trauma of losing his first wife. They argued that Melissa, overwhelmed by fear for her life, had reacted instinctively in a desperate bid to protect herself. The prosecution, however, had a different story to tell. They built their case methodically, using forensic evidence, witness testimony, and Melissa's own statements to dismantle her narrative. Key to their argument was the sheer brutality of Jason's injuries. Expert witnesses testified that the multiple blows to his head could not be reconciled with a single moment of panic. Instead, they suggested a prolonged and deliberate attack. The blood spatter patterns and the positioning of Jason's body further supported the theory that he had been struck while lying defenseless, casting serious doubt on Melissa's claim of a violent struggle. The prosecution also highlighted the evidence of premeditation. Melissa's financial records showed her inquiries about Jason's life insurance policy just weeks before his death. This, combined with the discovery of Jason's plans to modify his will to exclude Melissa, painted a troubling picture of motive. The prosecution suggested that Melissa, fearing the loss of financial security and control, had taken drastic and irreversible action to protect her interests. Witness testimony provided further insight into the dynamics of Jason and Melissa's relationship. Several of Jason's friends and family members took the stand, describing him as a devoted father who would never resort to violence. They spoke about his growing unease in the months leading up to his death, recounting conversations in which Jason had expressed fears about Melissa's behavior. His sister shared a particularly haunting detail. Jason had once confided that if anything ever happened to him, it wouldn't be an accident. Perhaps the most damning testimony came from a former acquaintance of Melissa's. This individual described Melissa's history of manipulative behavior in past relationships, including a pattern of using charm to gain control before turning to coercion when her desires were not met. The testimony, though unrelated to Jason directly, painted a chilling portrait of a woman capable of calculated actions to achieve her goals. Throughout the trial, Melissa remained composed, often appearing tearful during discussions of her relationship with Jason. Her defense team argued passionately on her behalf, pointing to her lack of prior violent behavior and the challenges of living with someone as emotionally complex as Jason. They claimed the prosecution's version of events was based on speculation, not proof. But as the trial progressed, the weight of the evidence became undeniable. Forensic science, eyewitness accounts, and Melissa's own actions in the aftermath of Jason's death painted a story that no amount of courtroom theatrics could refute. The jury deliberated for several days, combing through the details with painstaking care. When the verdict was read, the courtroom was silent. Melissa was found guilty of second-degree murder, her story of self-defense rejected in favor of a narrative of greed, control, and ultimate betrayal. The trial had been as much about uncovering the truth of Jason Corbett's final moments as it was about exposing the hidden realities of his life with Melissa. For his family, the verdict brought a measure of closure, but the pain of his loss remained a wound that would never fully heal. The conviction of Melissa Corbett brought an end to a long and grueling process for Jason Corbett's family, but the aftermath of the case left a profound impact on all involved. Jason's death had shattered not only his immediate family, but also the close-knit community of Ashwood Falls. For many, it was hard to reconcile the image of the charismatic and seemingly devoted Melissa with the cold and calculated murderer the trial had revealed. The trial had unearthed hidden truths about their marriage and cast a shadow over what had once seemed like a perfect life. For Jason's family, the verdict brought a bittersweet sense of justice. While they felt some relief knowing that Melissa would be held accountable for her actions, it did little to ease the deep grief they carried. Jason was gone, his bright future stolen in an instant of senseless violence. His children, now orphaned, were left to grapple with the trauma of losing both parents. Jason's family stepped in to provide the stability and love the children needed, determined to honor his legacy by giving them the kind of life he had worked so hard to build. The public reaction to the case was a mix of sorrow, outrage, and reflection. People across the country followed the story, drawn in by the shocking twists and the unraveling of what had once seemed like an idyllic family. It became a cautionary tale, a stark reminder that appearances can be deceiving, and that even the closest relationships can hide dark secrets. In the months following the trial, Melissa's actions continued to be scrutinized. Investigative journalists and true crime enthusiasts dug deeper into her past, uncovering stories of manipulation and control in previous relationships. Former acquaintances shared anecdotes that painted her as someone who always sought power in her personal and professional life, often at the expense of others. These revelations further solidified the public's view of Melissa as a master manipulator who had ultimately pushed her control to its deadly conclusion. Jason's memory, however, was not overshadowed by the tragedy of his death. His family and friends made it their mission to ensure he was remembered for the kind, devoted person he had been. They spoke openly about his love for his children, his passion for life, and his resilience in the face of earlier tragedies. Fundraisers and memorial events were held in his honor, with proceeds going toward charities that supported families affected by domestic violence and loss. For the community of Ashwood Falls, life slowly moved on, but the scars of the case remained. Neighbors who had once thought of the Corbett home as a symbol of happiness now viewed it as a haunting reminder of how little they had truly known about what went on behind closed doors. Some moved away, unable to shake the weight of the tragedy, while others found solace in coming together to support one another through the shared grief. Jason's children grew up with the love and guidance of their extended family, their father's legacy always present in their lives. Though the loss they experienced was profound, they carried forward the values he had instilled in them: kindness, perseverance, and love. Over time, they found ways to honor his memory, ensuring that his story would never be forgotten. The heartbreaking case of Jason Corbett became more than just another true crime story. It was a testament to the resilience of those left behind, a reminder of the dangers of unchecked control, and a call to look deeper into the lives we think we know. Jason's life, though tragically cut short, continued to inspire those who knew him, and his legacy endured as a beacon of hope in the face of unthinkable loss.